Alright guys, TeddyRecks here, and today I want to talk through a topic that I was planning to talk about a couple of days ago, but of course they announced the rule set, which is a big deal. I made a couple of videos on this, one of which was with Tan yesterday, with whom I was going to talk about this topic of the Halo players coming into Call of Duty, but instead we talked about Control. You can check that video out in the description box below and at the end of the video, all that good stuff. Like if you enjoy, subscribe if you are new. Today I want to talk about the trend, I guess, of Halo players coming into Call of Duty. What's happened in the past and what we can expect from these players coming into this year, because there's a few big names joining teams, and I know that a couple of people, maybe a few weeks ago at this point, have suggested I do this as a video, so I'm finally getting round to it. So if you do have any other suggestions for videos, leave them down in the comments and I'll try to provide. So firstly, let's talk about Enigma 6 and the Frosty situation. So Frosty, this is one of the most well-known Halo players, had a lot of success, won so many championships throughout his career in Halo, has made the transition into Call of Duty for this season. It's a little bit of an interesting one because I believe he's still going to play Halo with his Halo team on the Halo 5 game, and so maybe there's a new Halo game called Halo Infinite coming out. If you're a really big Halo fan watching this, I guess I apologise because I'm not as in tune with your scene as I am with Call of Duty, of course, but I would be interested in what you think the success rate is likely to be for these guys. I'm sure you know the talents of these players. I'm sure you're expecting them to be really solid and really strong. Give them a little bit of time, which of course they'll need to transition into this game. But I'm intrigued as to whether you really hope they're going to do very well, because if they don't do so well, maybe they'll go back to the Halo side of things. Whereas if they do really well, they're likely to stay in Call of Duty, like guys like Formal, guys like Enable that we'll talk about in a few minutes' time. So if you are a really hardcore Halo fan, I'd be interested to hear what your perspective is. Do you want them to be really good so you can prove, I guess, to some extent that Halo players are insane? Or do you want to preserve your own scene to the best of its possibility? I think that's an interesting paradigm. So, Frosty has joined Enigma 6. He's going to be playing with General, Cade, Diabolic and Kismet. It's not exactly a spectacular team, but then again, with 5v5 coming into play, picking up a guy like Frosty was a big risk, considering he's got absolutely 0 pro points to help you in the ladder situation. So you're just hoping he's going to be a superb talent and you can mould him into play for in a couple of months' time. It honestly seems like that Frosty, if he is super good, he'll probably move on from a team like Enigma 6, but I respect them for taking the chance on him because it actually means that they will not be in the 8-team playoff to get into pools for Vegas. So if you're not aware, the top 12 teams on pro points will be slotted into the Vegas pools. The other 4 teams will be determined from an 8-team qualifier, which is a double elimination bracket that we've seen before at Last Chance qualifiers. That will happen on the Thursday, December 6th before Vegas. And those 8 teams make up, the top 20 teams in the world in pro points. There's a fair few teams on there. Enigma 6, I believe, are just outside the threshold for getting in that point, which means they'll have to go through open bracket. They can still make pools, which is a huge advantage because you need to place top 32 at Vegas to get a shot of getting in the Pro League. So going through open bracket's a big deal, but if you can manage to win a load of series, get into pools, then you've got a good chance of actually making that qualifier to give yourself a good chance of making Pro League. I don't think this team will do it, but you never know. General and Cade had some success together back in Infinite Warfare when they teamed. General wasn't as good this year, and Cade was on lower tier teams like Fast Ballers type teams around that sort of region. Diabolic was on Enigma 6 this year, actually looked pretty solid at times. Back on Black Ops 3 was very good as well. Kismet really had his breakout towards the end of the year as well on the Conquest team, I believe, that took a map off Optic Gaming. And he also performed really well at the Last Chance qualifier on, I believe, Gas Gaming or something like that. So it's an interesting team for Frosty to slot into. You would have thought maybe someone with more experience could have helped, but I guess General has played for many years. He does consider himself some sort of a leader, a general, if you will. And of course, these Halo players are going to need some sort of guidance and some sort of moulding to understand and fit in with the game. But then again, I say that, the game is so different to what we've seen in past years, especially with the rule set that's been announced. So maybe the adjustment period will be just as much for the normal CoD pros as it will for someone like Frosty, who obviously has incredible individual aim using the controller. And I think gun skill is probably going to play a huge part this year, considering the game is very fast paced and it's all about trading, and hitting every shot is going to mean a hell of a lot, such as a game like Infinite Warfare when it's very much gun skill dependent and less to do with strategy and tactics and posting up on head glitches and playing smart. That's at least how I see it. So then quickly to touch on Mental, who's a Gears of War player for Optic, widely considered the best Gears of War player in the world. He's also trying to compete for CoD this year. I'm assuming a similar situation where he's also going to compete in Gears of War, but it sets a cool precedent for Call of Duty, right? That it's got so big, or maybe those other esports are struggling, even though I think Gears of War's doing pretty good, but Halo's definitely down in the doldrums right now. It sets a good precedent for Call of Duty that these sort of caliber players are getting attracted into our esport. And it's a good sign for increasing competition down the line, getting more high caliber console players into the mix. And I'm sure with time, the skill on the sticks will transfer for these guys very nicely. That's at least my prediction. So one more team to talk about before we talk about the old school guys that have come across from Halo. Splyce Halo. So these guys are also going to be competing in Halo this year, but in Call of Duty as well. So Shotzzy, who's considered by many their star player, I believe he's like 17 or something like that. So he's not going to be able to compete this year. He turns 18 in like June or something like that, which means he'll only be able to compete at CWL finals and also CoD champs. So I doubt he's going to be just coming in for those couple of events, even if these guys do end up making it. So Renegade, Eco and Stellur, I believe they're the reigning world champions in Halo, or maybe they won it last year and came second this year, but they've been absolutely superb, running the scene, and now they want to compete in Call of Duty as well. Really exciting precedent this sets, I'm not going to lie. The interesting thing is who they've brought in as their 4th and 5th, because Renegade, Eco and Stellur are going to be teaming. Shotzzy has been playing S&D tournaments. I think he's been playing with Illy and Cillium and those guys. It looks lights out, I'm not going to lie. They're going to be playing with TeddyRecks and RambyBamby. This is such an interesting situation. You'd have thought like a veteran talent, like maybe you get someone like Theory, you get someone like Parasite, or someone who can lead these guys. Very interesting how they pick up 2 S&D stars who have no experience getting anywhere in tournaments really. Although I believe they placed top 16 at champs. So it's a very interesting mix of roster, and I'm not really sure how Splyce are going to get away with this in the fact that they have 2 teams potentially competing at the same event. If they match up against each other, there's definitely a potential conflict of interest there where the Halo team can let the other guys win to give them a better chance of winning the big trophy, or whether the main Splyce team has already done well enough at that point that they could potentially give the Halo team the win in order to get a better chance at Pro League or something like that. Potential conflict of interest, but I doubt that will come into effect. So we look back into the past a little bit. The MLG Fall Championship 2013, also known as MLG Columbus, had a lot of Halo players competing at this event. I found this article from way back in the day on November 2013. Notable Halo players that made the switch. This Primal team was the one that actually had some success. You know these names: Formal, Enable, Snakebite and Ace. Snakebite and Ace went back to Halo, I believe. And the other teams that didn't do so well with Ogre 2, Maniac. Is that actually the real Ninja? That actually could be the real Ninja. That's quite interesting. Miquin, these guys, they ended up going back to Halo because I believe at that time Halo was still, the scene was kind of still thriving to some extent. Whereas Formal and Enable did so well at this event, or not exactly incredible, but their first Call of Duty event they placed top 24, that they had the opportunity to then say, okay, we've done well enough here, I really think I can make it, let's start making moves in the CoD scene, because there's a lot more money and a lot more prestige, I guess you could say, in Call of Duty. So we look at Enable. He hasn't really had the success until the last couple of years. He goes straight from Primal onto this Elevate squad, moves around a little bit, goes into FaZe, of course, where he subbed in for Optic at ESWC, won a couple of events here and there, got out of the limelight, and then this year he really came into his own on this Team Caliber squad. They won Stage 2, they came second at the World Champs, he looked phenomenal apart from his S&D, of course. And now he's on 100 Thieves, a superb squad as well, so Enable, it's taken him a little bit of time to move up through the ranks. Not quite the same scenario as Formal, we'll talk about him in just a second here, but regardless, a great example of someone who can do it in Halo and then come to Call of Duty and still win events. Formal is just a freak of nature, man. This guy is on another level. He won multiple events in Halo, he comes into Call of Duty, and within, 9 months of competing in his first event, he gets on Optic Gaming. Like, what is going on? He definitely did team hop a little bit. He won that Gfinity 3 event with Envy very soon after he joined that squad. Then he's straight onto Optic Gaming a few months later, and he didn't leave there for another, 3.5 years? Crazy stuff. Winning so many events, considered one of the best assault rifle players of all time at this point already. and definitely with the potential to keep going as we move on forward. So one other guy we got to talk about is Hook. So this is a bit of a different situation. He came into Call of Duty in like 2014 when he was really young, like 15 years of age, this kind of thing. Competed in Advanced Warfare, had some pretty damn good success, and then due to the age restriction, he had to go over to Halo. And it's quite incredible what this kid's managed to achieve. And I guess you could liken someone like Hook to someone like Shotzzy, I guess, who can't quite compete on the Splyce Halo team this year. And I believe Shotzzy also started out in Call of Duty a while ago. Then he's gone to Halo, won the World Champs, of course, what a monster. Now he's looking to come back to Call of Duty. So I guess you can take parallels. Hook back in Advanced Warfare second. He never quite won an event. He actually still hasn't won an event in Call of Duty despite coming very close. He even comes second in this E-League event in Black Ops 4. And then we look at Halo. Look at all these victories, man. He's definitely Team Envious's golden child. Just going off on the main stage here. He comes over to Halo, and within a few months, he's competing at the very top, one of the best players in the game. Comes back to World War II. Had a bit of a rough start of things on that slasher team at the start of the year. Then as we move a little bit further down the line, wow, this guy was dropping numbers. 1.1, 1.15 towards the end of the year at Champs. Just hard carrying that Envy squad. Incredible raw talent on the sticks. And I feel like the best Halo players in the world also share this pedigree. Maybe Frosty's a little bit different because he's a bit older. Maybe Mental's a little bit different. But definitely someone like Shotzzy is someone who I'm going to be looking out for to have a breakout like Hook has. But look, we look back to this article here talking about the players that tried to come over to Call of Duty and it didn't work out. Only Formula and Enable really made their name out of these guys that competed. And it took Enable quite a while to earn his reputation. You know, a year or two. Formula did it super quickly. But as I say, like he's a one of a kind, you know. So the question is to you really, what expectations do you have for a guy like Frosty on this Enigma 6 squad? Obviously it's not the best team here, and when Formula and Enable came into Call of Duty, they were on a team of all Halo players, and then they got noticed and picked up that way. Do you expect Frosty to have a similar progression? Because I don't think this team will make Pro League. I think it's very unlikely for them to be the top 16 teams in the world. But maybe there's a chance. So in my opinion, they'll be competing through the amateur side of things, the amateur circuit. So maybe Frosty has an opportunity to get picked up through that aspect if he really shows up big. And the Splyce team is very interesting. Again, I feel like this is a similar situation with 3, and next year will be all 4, supposedly, Halo players going onto this lineup. What are the chances that one of them shows up significantly better than the others in a similar way to how Formula and Enable, they showed up much better than Ace and Snakebite did, as far as I can tell at least. And one of these guys gets pinched onto another squad or is decided to be used as a substitute for a Pro League team or something like that. If you're a Halo fan, I'm sure you're putting a lot of stock into these guys. And it's difficult for me to say that they shouldn't have the stock. Certain players haven't been able to transition to Call of Duty that well, but as I say, maybe they just did bad at one event and they didn't give it much of a chance considering Halo was still a viable opportunity at that point. Nowadays, with Halo seemingly dying off to some extent, committing to Call of Duty might be a route these guys take, and if they can transfer their raw aim and talent into the Call of Duty scene, I see no reason why they couldn't compete at the top given a year or two. So anyway, I think it's an exciting precedent for Call of Duty, maybe not so much for other esports. But regardless, like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new. If you've got any thoughts on this, leave them down in the comment section below. Thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I'll see you next time.